take a look at the Oklahoma land rushes of 1889 to 1895. So this story starts with people wanting land in Oklahoma, and this was available for them because of the Dawes Act. The Dawes Act of 1887 had laid out plots for Native Americans to live on. No longer were they to live on reservations, they had to farm like the whites on a 168 plot of land. Any land that was left over and wasn't settled by a Native American was set up for sale, so whites could then go onto this land and buy it for themselves using the Homestead Act. This leads to our development, the fact these land rushes actually took place. The first land rush took place in 1889 and was to settle the middle part of Oklahoma here. At 12 noon a cannon sounded and people rushed to go find the plot of land they wanted. People chose plots of land with good fertile soil, access to water, stuff like that, so it was imperative that you were there and raced to get the best plot of land. People who went on the sound of the cannon were known as boomers because the boom of the cannon signalled it was time for them to go and get their land. However, some people were sneaky. Because there were so many acres of land available, they would have camped out before the sound of the cannon to get their land and claim the flag. These people here were known as Sooners. In total, there were 7 land rushes. Just to show you how big these land rushes were, in 1893, 8 million acres were opened up for settlement, so no wonder people could be Sooners. So this leads us to the end, the consequence of the Oklahoma land rush. Well, the consequence was all of America had now been settled, so the government had achieved its goal of taking over the whole of the North American continent. It meant that there was no more westward expansion because the frontier had been closed. There was nowhere left to settle. It also proved this idea that manifest destiny had been achieved, that God had wanted whites to settle all of the land, and they had achieved it. So the road ahead was closed for further settlement because it had been achieved. However, for Native Americans, the Oklahoma land rush can be seen as the final nail in their coffin, because the huge swathes of land were taken away from them, proved this idea they must assimilate or die. No longer could they hunt the buffalo because even more land had been settled and they could no longer hunt.